Hello and welcome to Rewind Reviews, the last in our series of podcasts looking at films from our past. This week, it was my turn to choose, and I chose The Addams Family. In this podcast, we normally give some context for our history with the thing. Do I just jump straight into that, Chris? I should say hi. I'm Dan. I'm joined by Chris. We should introduce ourselves, I guess.
Right.
We should assume that every podcast is someone's first podcast.
I mean, to be fair, Dan, you know, setting up what the podcast was arguably that.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, there you go. We're user friendly. We're good at this. We are so good at this.
I think the last 30 seconds has proven otherwise.
Shh, we're so good at this. I can cut that out. It's fine. I won't remember because I'm not good at this. I mean, we're so good at this. Anyway. So yeah, this week we watched The Addams Family. My fault. My fault, my choice. No, I'm kidding. Look, so my history with this is that when I was younger, Nadia's joined us. Just as I was starting a whole sentence. Absolutely outrageous timing, Nadia. You should be ashamed. She says she's sorry, everyone. Good. She will be.
Oh, if people email, I'll personally apologise to you.
Oh, don't do that, because you'll never not finish that. Nadia said, I'm going to repeat this because I think it's very funny. If people email their complaints, mail@nothingbutstatic.co.uk, she will personally reply to each one. So if you'd like a little email from Nadia, send that across.
Apologies.
Yeah, I mean...
I could just give them an update on my life.
Yeah. So yeah, just say how offended you were at Nadia interrupting the podcast, and she'll apologise.
Yeah.
She's being very careful around the cables. There you go. Thank you, Nadia.
I'm off to the market.
Okay. Yeah. Bye. There you go. She's going. She came in to get something.
Yeah, I mean, as someone who's spoken to Nadia quite a bit over the last decade, I'm not overly sure how sincere those apologies will be. But give it a go.
Let's find out. mail@nothingbutstatic.co.uk. Anyway, before I was so rudely interrupted by Nadia coming into this room in which she also lives. Do you know what I mean? It's terrible. Monster. So I was medium on Addams Family as a child, as a very young child. But when we moved to Ireland, we briefly, before our house was ready, we stayed for a couple of weeks at my grandparents on my dad's side, which is not the nana I've referenced that worked in a video shop, but on my dad's side, my grandma, and we went over and we stayed with them, and they had an equivalent to Sky. It might have actually just been Sky. I don't know if Sky operated on at the time, but they had essentially a version of cable TV or satellite TV, and it had Cartoon Network and Bloomberg, I think. I don't know if they were still doing Bloomberg at the time, but the channel that runs just cartoons, and it was basically Hanna-Barbera non-stop, and I stumble across The Addams Family, the very short-lived Hanna-Barbera cartoon, which I think is really fun. It's kind of weird, and I like it. At this point, I discover there's a movie, and, well, I have to see the movie. So we rent the movie, and I absolutely adore it. Then we get the sequel, absolutely adore that, and have been I'd say a semi-casual Addams Family fan ever since. I think it's a really fun premise. I love the characters. I think they're super, quirky, and I think the premise of this family that are just sort of the American traditional, white picket fence family just flipped on its head, they're from opposite land where things that are bad are good. It's just a really funny idea, and there's usually a lot of good jokes you can draw out of putting them in normal society. I think the Addams Family work best when they bump up against normal non-Addams people, because then it exposes how strange their whole way of being is. I very fond of these movies as a kid. Absolutely adore, and still to this day, the second one is ingrained in my memory. I enjoyed this first one. I loved that second one. Loved as a kid. So we have to watch this one first. I'm not saying I wouldn't have wanted to watch this one, but I will say I've much stronger and fonder a connection to the second Addams Family movie. Maybe it's that old thing we've talked about where sequels seem to get replayed a lot on TV. Maybe they were cheaper than the originals. So Terminator 2, Short Circuit 2, Ghostbusters 2, Beverly Hills Cop 3. Addams Family 2, like all of those were just on loop constantly, it seemed, when I was a kid. You could always find one of those on TV. So yeah, I'm a very, very big fan of Addams Family, but particularly that second one. So yeah, it was really interesting to sit back and rewatch this, because I had very, very vague memories of what this one contained. So it was both a completely not fresh and fresh viewing experience, because as I watched it, it came back to me. But like, yeah, it was particularly interesting. How about you, Dad? Because I feel like we reviewed Wednesday for the other podcast for Nothing But Static, and I remember you being like, I don't really know what the Addams Family is about, but I could be misremembering.
No, I think that's correct. I have no real. I know Uncle Fester. I know Cousin It. I know the family by kind of. Oh, by the way, apologies if anyone could hear typing when Dan was talking. Then I was emailing the podcast to complain about Nadia interrupting.
Oh my god!
It did. Yeah,
I'm sorry.
Presumably, you can't check that at the moment because of your technical difficulties. But yes, which we will talk more about at the end.
Yes, yes, we will.
So yeah, it was just a short email, just saying I couldn't believe it happened. Madness. I know the cultural osmosis of the Addams Family, but I don't remember particularly watching these movies. The thing's mad. Mm-hmm. I feel like I would have seen some form of Addams Family content, but because how else do I know who's who? And Christopher Lloyd in particular is obviously incredibly iconic and recognizable as Uncle Fester, or
Gordon.
I mean, that's
as
a
Gordon.
Surprise! Imagine Dan, right? Imagine that you know the Addams Family and you know the cultural touchstones of the Addams Family, and you know that Christopher Lloyd is Uncle Fester. Imagine the plot of this movie unfolding with that being your context.
It's quite funny because there's a part of me though that I feel like there's a part of me that we're gonna have to get into this in more detail in a minute, but like there is a part of me that wonders if actually like the viewing of this is like, oh, it is just some random guy, but like he's just as weird and he fits in, and like it makes just as much sense for this family to accept a perfect stranger and just say, he's Uncle Fester now. Like, even though the movie goes in a different direction than that would also make so much sense for the Addams Family. The idea that it would just be like a found family is just as good to them, if that makes sense.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway.
But equally, yeah. Well, we'll get into it when we get into the movie. But yeah, so I was relatively cold watching this. And it wasn't necessarily a big part of my my childhood and stuff. So with that, often we're asking the does it hold up? Overall thoughts. Would you recommend? So I'm gonna go to you first for that, because I think that context is always more interesting when it's a rewatch. So yeah, how did you feel as the Addams Family unfolded for you, Dan?
Yeah, it's an interesting one, this one, because I think, and I joked a few times before we started recording with Chris, because did you watch it with Jess? He was like, yeah. I was like, oh dear, because rewatching it was quite strange, because I was really enjoying it, but I was hit very powerfully with something, I don't know if we've had this before with the podcast, where I was like, I don't know if I had sat down to watch this, with a partner or like with family or friends, being the one that was like had been a fan of this, I was sort of struggling to think of how I would defend it, because I could see obvious issues with this movie that I was enjoying. Does that make sense? So I was in this really weird position of like, I like this. I think this is really fun and super weird. And maybe that's what I like about it. Maybe its uniqueness outweighs some of the character stuff not being perfect, or some of the structural flaws, or just some odd choices, like in general. Because, but maybe that's what's so good about the movie. Maybe it's being offbeat is what I like about it. Because we talked so many times in this podcast about, and our other podcasts, about like, for me very particularly, I'm not going to speak for Chris here. I'm very particular about like, I've seen a lot of movies and a lot of TV shows in my time now, and I get very excited when something does something different. And sometimes that's almost enough to make up for other flaws. And I think I can't decide if this is that example. Maybe it was like 10, one part nostalgia, one part that it feels like unlike any other movie we've reviewed for this podcast. And that was just like, yeah, I recommend this because I had a really good time. But there was just that thing in the back of my brain that was like, does this function? Is this actually a good movie? Like, and I couldn't quite decide, because there were so many things that just my practical, didactic, sort of like critical brain was going, no, on paper that doesn't really function. But I was like, but it did. I enjoyed it, and it left me in a really weird quandary where, like, I am definitely going to be recommending this, and I do think people should check it out. But I am sort of going to caveat that with, because I think there's nothing else like it. Like, we've never watched a movie like this for this podcast. I just can't think of one. And unless you've got something in your back pocket, Chris, that you're like, actually, it was this, and I'll be like, oh yeah, we have covered something like this. But it was just such a strange. Like, the plot is sort of, like, so thin it might not even, barely exists, but yeah, it's quite gripping. The character work is all very thin, but again, it feels weirdly engrossing. Like, it's funny, but, like, I'm worried, is it the same joke over and over again? I keep laughing, so maybe it isn't. You know what I mean? There's a lot of that. So yeah, I don't know. I would say that the actual answer is mixed feelings, but if we're doing recommend, not recommend, I think I'm recommending this because I absolutely had a blast rewatching it, and it has made me very excited to check out the sequel, Addams Family Values, which I remember much more vividly, and I think does a lot more of what I think. It's like they figured out when they did this movie afterwards, like, that's the thing that works best, so they focused on that element most in the next movie, or more in the next movie. So, you know what I mean? It's like they sort of they found the ingredient that they liked and, like, lent on it more in the next edition, and so it benefits from it. Although, not seen that in a few years, so maybe I'll be proved wrong. How about you then, coming to it for the first time? Because you're the fictional audience I had in my mind that I was watching this alongside, worrying, how do I defend this? And some of these choices when I'm enjoying it.
I think the movie definitely warms up and warms you into it, because my biggest kind of thought, or I guess in some ways criticism, but it didn't mean I necessarily didn't enjoy it, which, a lot of the things you'd said, but the big one you didn't say was, for a while the movie feels like a sketch show.
Yeah.
Like, the plot is so thin that it almost just feels like it's a collection of sketches.
Yes. I did sort of I sort of nudged against that point without actually making it when I sort of talked about the thinness of the plot. I almost said that sentence when I was doing that.
Yeah.
It was definitely on my mind.
Well,
also.
I referenced it then because for sure. And I think it is that the plot is so thin it feels like a collection of scenes early on, but then it starts to, at the point where we have things like them winning, basically the quote unquote bad guys winning, and the Addams family getting locked out of the house and that kind of thing. Suddenly then it's a bit more plot heavy, and we have a character arc for Gordon, sort of the weirdness of the ending on what they I don't think anything is that clean. It does reach a point, so I guess spoilers, like this. Well, okay, I'll say what I recommend. Yeah, I would recommend it for the same, and then we'll go spoilers. I would recommend it for the same reasons you recommend it. I think it is very unique. I think it is very funny. Some of the it's at its best in a way when the humor is subtle, and it's like the humor is like major cards accepted. Being the background sign to a lemonade stand or whatever that stand is, what is it? Tombstone pizza. What are you going to have on yours? Or something like that. There's a lot of very funny sight gags that are just in the background, and I think that's actually where the movie's at its best. And the performances are all brilliant. They're all, it's really, really good performances, especially Christopher Lloyd, who's phenomenal. So, and you can also, it is one of those movies. I think sometimes you watch a movie thinking, I can see why younger people that watch this have a lot of affection for it in a negative way, because you sit there and think, it's not really good, or I'm bored, or whatever. I think this is on the right side of, I can see why if you watch it at the right age, you have affection for this movie. Like, I meant that in a good way when I watched this one. So, it's not, I'm not itching to do the sequel. I can't necessarily see a scenario where I particularly rewatch it, unless, maybe it's, I don't know, Halloween and we've dressed up and, my daughter wants to watch it or whatever. But I think I would still recommend it, because in that scenario, if she's the right age And she's like, "Oh, it's I'm dressed as a pumpkin. Can we watch a Halloween movie? I'm not going to put on Friday the 13th, am I? Like,
No.
and if she was a bit older than some of the I would probably, I don't know if I've seen this either, but I would, if I was sat there going, oh, it's this or Scooby Doo, I'm probably putting on this. So there is a scenario in which I would watch it again, because I think if you've got young children, if you've got nostalgia for it, or you just want to see Christopher Lloyd fucking chewing the scenery to phenomenal effect, then there's a lot of reasons to recommend. So yeah, I would recommend as well.
Yeah, and I think you've hit on the performances. I mean, Raul Julia, Christina Ricci, Angelica Houston. Unfortunately, I have briefly forgotten the name of the actor that does Pudsley. He's also great in the movie. I'll find that in a second. But I mean, my God, talk about a cast. Like this is top to bottom perfectly cast. He's called Jimmy Workman, is the kid that plays Pudsley, and obviously the guy Carol Strucken, who plays Lurch. They're all amazing. Judith Malino plays Granny. I don't know. There's no one in this movie that's not absolutely nailing it at every second, and that's not an easy thing to do. This is a really hard tonal balancing act, this movie, and that is one thing that I think on a rewatch or even a reviewing, if you've never seen this movie before, that you go in ready to marvel at how they balance this tone, because you're right, it's a really good family movie. Despite its rather morbid tone or jokes, they found a really good way to still make it. I mean, kid-friendly sounds like worse than it is, but it still can be watched by the whole family. It's not so inappropriate. So yeah, big fan in that sense, and I definitely think we should be recommending it. Do we jump straight in then to some of the plot stuff and some of the choices? Because I think we're both itching to talk about the one big, very strange plot element that is really it's the core plot of the movie, but it's handled in such a weird way, and I suspect you're as eager as I.
In some ways it's the only plot of the movie, Dan.
Yeah, that's true. So, for those who don't know, I'll quickly recap it, and then I'll let you. I have some thoughts because I'm very curious to hear what you think. For those who don't remember or haven't seen the movie, the Addams Family have had a long lost brother, Uncle Fester. He's been gone for 25 years, which, by the way, is a little nod to the original series, because the original series, the sitcom, had aired 25 years prior. So that was a little reference to that. Not in canon with the series or anything. It's not implying Fester left and they've not aged since. But that's why they chose that date. And basically, the Addams Family have a huge stack of wealth. There's a group that want access to that money, and this lady who has a sort of a adopted son. We found out later, adopted Gordon, who she decides to pass off as a returning Uncle Fester, but we start getting weird hints. He starts fitting in with the family really well. He starts referencing stuff that it's like he shouldn't know that. Like he shouldn't know how to do. He does a dance with his brother, and you're like, how do you know how to do that dance if you're not the real Fester? And the movie sort of is sometimes hinting he's Gordon, sometimes hinting he really is Fester, and then at the end of the movie, and this is proper spoilers now. We reveal. He's been hit by lightning since the movie ended. We just look at the little epilogue, and he's like, "Oh yeah, I got hit by lightning. Turns out I am the real Fester." And then we just carry on in some of the clunkiest dialogue that has ever existed. Now there's a reason it's that way, but it's very strange. So it turns out he was the real Fester all along. Which again, there is definitely evidence of which in the rest of the movie, which was intended. The ending less planned, but we'll talk about that. And it's pretty strange. It's an odd plot. Especially in the way it's executed. What are your sort of lead thoughts on this, Chris? I'm fascinated by where you landed on it.
I think it was just the oddity of it for me. I'm pleased to hear there's a reason. I don't know if it is triv or whatever. It's true. Or maybe
it's triv, but we can tackle it at this point. I'll bring it up so it's ready.
Because that was my big thing. It just felt so tacked on, and it just reaches a point where because of the dance, because of the way he suddenly is with the children, you just sat there going, even if you didn't know anything about the Addams Family, I can't see how you're not sat there going, but he he's Uncle Fester, right? Like he is the actual Uncle Fester, which then makes it feel weird when he does the whole "I love you, mother. I'm going to take their money," and then he takes their money, and we don't really cut to him feeling guilty about it, even though he has to surely be feeling guilty about it. And then he does the right thing, but he sort of gets forgiven really quickly, and it just feels like the lightning. Oh, he was the real one thing. Just feels a bit cheap, like yeah, because it's trying to do too many things, because you're like, okay, well, in some ways he chooses that family, but would he be happy with his mother being buried alive, which is what happens. But because of the quick, clunky way it's done, we don't sort of really get that acknowledged. But if you're going to do that, why do the "I love you, mother, I am Gordon, we're going to take the money" bit? It's trying to do too much, and it comes across really clunky.
Yeah, so I think the original plan... Well, I'll express my feelings on it, having watched it, and then we'll talk about the actual information that we've got about the ending and about their choices. As I was watching it, I found it very strange, because I like you, was like, oh yeah, he's like an imposter Fester. And I'm watching the movie going, but there's things that hint he's not, but there's things that hint he is, and he's obviously very conflicted. And the movie's not doing a brilliant job of balancing that. This is one of those things I said earlier where the movie is very obviously flawed in ways that I don't think I have a defense for, despite enjoying it, if that makes sense. And it's this plot is very clunkily handled, because they want us to believe Fester is conflicted, but what it often ends up coming out as is a coin flip. He very rarely comes across like he's struggling to choose between the two things. It's like he's in a scene with his sort of quote-unquote mother, the lady that's put him in this position to try and steal this money, and he's 100% committed. I'm Gordon, we're stealing money. And then he's with the family, and he's Fester, and he's fitting in, and it's working. And I think what the movie wanted to do was imply a conflicted man torn between the mother that sort of raised him as far as his memory goes, and his family that had taken him in and treated him so well, and that he liked and fit in with, and brought him much more happiness than the mother that he had, who was quite mean to him, basically, very dismissive of him, and sort of treated him like a tool rather than a child. And I think the idea was going to be, at the end, it didn't matter that he was the real Fester or not. He was an Addams now. He'd made the right choice. He joined the family. He fit in. And that's a lovely idea. But the movie doesn't do that. The movie last minute decides to just go, no, he definitely is, just in case you were worrying. Which, I understand that impulse, but I actually think what the movie was doing prior would have probably worked better if they just stuck to that plan, or committed to embedding 100% more stuff, throughout the movie, that he is the real Fester. I mean, there is plenty, because obviously he remembers the name of Flora and Fauna, he remembers the dance. Later on, obviously his mother does admit that she found him rather than birthed him, therefore we know that there's a really good chance he's Fester. There's a moment when they hint that she also knows that he's the real Fester, where she says something like, maybe I shouldn't have sent him. Like, I could have literally found an actor to pretend to be Fester with no investment, but I've kind of fucked up because I've sent the actual Fester into this, and it's backfiring. Is kind of what is implied by that line of dialogue. So it's all there in the movie.
I didn't even catch that line of dialogue, and
Sure.
did find myself thinking, well, surely she knows. Why has she done this? And even that line of dialogue doesn't really
Yeah, it sort of implies she
solve
went,
that problem.
Yeah, well, it sort of implies she went, I can use this. It's risky, but I can use this. And then as it became clear that he was becoming very fond of the family and it was starting to backfire, she's like, shit, I probably this was a risk I shouldn't have taken. I should have just hired an actor instead of taking the risk of putting Fester back with the rest of the Addams. But I actually really like the idea that at the end it didn't matter to anyone that he was or wasn't Fester. He was Fester now. He'd proven himself an Addams, and I love that. I think that's really sweet. But the implication, the idea, and this happened really close, and this is where we get into the triv now. So all of the actors were concerned about how ambiguous that ending was. They couldn't see the sort of, in my opinion, the genius of it not being as important to the family as that he was there for them in the moment and that he was an Addams in the truest sense. More than the actual, is he literally or not a member of this family? So it was going to be completely unknown in terms of unknown, unconfirmed by the end of the movie. Plenty of evidence that he was, but nothing like outright spoken. And the cast members basically all felt really impassioned by this. And in the end, Christina Ricci gave an impassioned speech to Scott Rudin and Barry Sonfeld. Scott Rudin, the producer, Barry Sonfeld, the director, about 2 weeks before shooting, that Fester should not be left ambiguous. And they needed to clarify he definitely wasn't an imposter. They felt really strongly about that. Sonfeld has remembered since that actually the only cast member that appeared not to care about the fate of this character was Christopher Lloyd, which does amuse me. Like, Christopher Lloyd, I guess, just was like, yeah, whatever. I mean, he just shot 2 Back to the Future movies back to back. He was exhausted from what I can tell, from having looked into this. But he thought the script was really fun. So he was sure it was going to be a hit. So he definitely wanted to do it. But, like, you know, I'm looking at that now, knowing that's how it played out, I do wish the cast had been... I wish Sonfeld had stuck to his guns and left it ambiguous, because I do actually think that's better. And if it's not going to be better, then if you're not doing that, then the alternative is to have him realise earlier in the movie that he's really Uncle Fester, and, you know, choose to help the family and do it that way and make it a big moment of realisation rather than a weird tacked on dialogue line. This middle ground is actually the problem.
I think the cast are right. I think he should be an actual member of the family. The execution of it shouldn't be this. The execution of it is just really poor.
Well, the execution feels like a thing that was decided.
They started filming.
Well, yeah, exactly. The execution feels like a thing that was decided 2 weeks before they shot the movie. Is what it feels like.
Yeah, because and actually, to be fair, the pieces are like. I can kind of see that, like you say, a lot of the pieces are there. He does choose to help the family before it is revealed that he actually is a member of the family.
Correct.
And that is sort of what I would do. I'd go, okay, well, he needs to be a member of the family, but it's much better if he realises that he wants to help them before he even knows that. Mm-hmm. But I think it's also it's partly the fact that it's off screen. He gets hit by lightning
off screen,
and then it's just like, and then it's just. I don't know, we see him get hit. I think we see him get hit by the lightning.
Oh, we do in the like sort of ending sequence. But then they cut to like X amount of weeks or whatever later.
That's like 7 months later or something. It's mad. I mean, don't get me wrong. The 7 months later is worth it for one gag, which was fucking amazing. Which is the lawyer's husband, but now being with Cousin It. Like,
the lawyer's wife. The
lawyer's wife. Sorry, one of my favourite bits in the whole movie.
Yeah, it's incredible.
But yeah, it's just we don't see the revelation. We don't see or maybe a scene with the mum like. Wow, you think he's worthless? He is, Uncle. Whatever it may be. Maybe she reveals it to she's like, they're like, we thought we could trust him. You think you could trust him? He is the real Uncle Fester, and he's not even willing to help. And then separately, we see that that's not true, and that he does help them. Something like that. I actually, personally, I think the idea is right. I think he should be a member of the family, but the execution of it is horrendous.
Yeah, so I think the actual answer
of it makes you go, oh, look, we shouldn't have bothered doing this.
Right, this is what I'm saying. Of the 3 options, this is like worst case scenario, which is doing it, but doing it with this particular brand of throwaway line execution, which is played off like a joke and sort of feels ham-fisted and last minute, which it is. Obviously the best way to do it would have been to come up to make this decision much earlier in the process, bake it into the script properly, make it a big moment that we actually see and is baked into the movie. The problem was, by the time they were doing all this, the movie was starting to go over budget anyway, and filming new scenes and doing more rewrites would have probably been a problem, which we'll get to. Filming this film, no one's favourite, it seems. We'll talk about that later. But I think you're right. I mean, strictly speaking, like probably the absolute best case scenario is Fester properly realising it within the course of the movie. But with the movie we have, I would prefer they stuck to the ambiguous ending than confirm it in this half-assed way. That's my feeling on it. In the situation they were in, when the decision was made 2 weeks before shooting, I'm like, no, don't do it then. That's incorrect. So yeah, but it still works mostly because it does end up getting played as a gag. Like the movie was very much winking at you, and there's something like, "Oh yeah, don't you, tell them what happened? Oh yeah, the lightning hit me, and I got all my memories back. Oh really? Yeah." And just like the movie just like treats it as it is, which is just like a really dumb thing that suddenly happened, which I enjoy. I do enjoy. I do have a soft spot for a movie that just like just does expository dialogue really cheesily on purpose for comic effect. But I would much rather they've handled it one of two other ways, for sure. So the big question, I guess, then, with that being the sort of the arc of the movie for Fester, like, how do we feel about what the other characters sort of go through? Like, particularly, I think Gomez is kind of the other major piece of this puzzle. So for those who don't remember, again, Gomez is the head of the family. His brother, he had an argument with his brother many years ago, feels very deeply sad about what happened. His brother, left as a result of his argument and hasn't been seen since. And he goes through all the gamut of emotions as this all plays out. When he thinks Fester is back, he's excited, but then he doesn't necessarily care for him, so he's sad, but then he realizes, hey, that's probably actually normal for brothers to quibble, and like maybe that does make us brothers. Then he sort of accepts him. We get the mamushka, the dance, which is a sequence I love, but I was watching that scene like, I don't know how I defend this scene to anyone. I don't know. We'll come back to the mamushka, I guess, because it feels very much the Grease dance hall scene where I'm like, it goes on for an awful long time. I'm not sure what it adds.
It doesn't go on as long as the Saturday Night Fever scene in Aeroplane.
No, that's also true. No, you're right. Yeah, we've had a couple of those this season, haven't we? Dance sequences. This is a weird season of just like dance, needlessly long dance sequences. You're right. It doesn't go on as long as that, but it is something I was sort of like, would I feel faintly embarrassed having chosen this movie and watching it with like family and friends to be like, oh yeah, this is what I like. It's what I used to call the Christmas Doctor Who effect. When the Christmas episodes of Doctor Who would be really bad or cheesy, and I'd be sat there mildly embarrassed that this is what I watch. A whole room of people looking at me going, "That's what you like." Anyway, so that's the he goes through the gamut of acceptance and stuff, and then just when he's accepted Fester, he discovers he's an imposter, and then obviously maybe that's also part of the problem with that reveal of Fester being real. We don't get the catharsis of Gomez, of addressing Gomez, discovering it is his real brother after all. I don't know. Maybe that's one of the things we're robbed of by them doing it in a quick line at the end like that. But yeah, how did you feel about Gomez's arc in general?
I've just discovered because you're saying about you said we've had a weird dance hall. We've had a weird overlong dance thing. Yeah. But it just made me think about the other movies this season, and I've just realised, and I'm pleased to say. No, Dan. This the other loose theme of the season that was broken by movies like Aeroplane and Brick and stuff. But I am pleased to say, Dan, Christopher Lloyd appeared in an episode of The West Wing.
Very good. So, well, wait, we didn't even check Airplane. The problem was Brick and Johnny English.
Brick and Johnny English. Yeah.
We never checked Airplane.
I'm pleased that we've ended on. Yeah, but I would have thought. Maybe did I check it? No, I don't.
No, because wait a second. Let's not rule that out, because keep in mind, Jonathan Banks of Breaking Bad is in Airplane. Like there's. And Breaking Bad was much later on. Like this is Airplane, early 80s. West Wing's only 15 years later.
Yeah, there might be someone.
Yeah.
Let's do a quick because let's quickly Airplane.
While you're doing a quick Google though, I will say for me the Gomez arc works really well, and I think it is mostly sold by Raul Julia's just amazing performance. Obviously, he's passed away now, and what an absolute loss. And watching this movie, just another reminder of the brilliance of what he does in this movie. And I don't think no matter how many times they do Addams Family or Addams Family adjacent projects, I don't think we're ever going to get I don't think we're ever going to get Raul Julia. I don't think we're ever going to get anyone as good as him playing Gomez Addams again. And I love the guy. I forget the guy's name. The guy that does it for Wednesday, the Netflix show. He's brilliant. Luis Guzman, I think he's called. I think I've got that right. He's wonderful, and he's a really smart choice, by the way, and a really fun one. But yeah, it's just such a such a heartfelt performance. Like you believe his pain for his loss of his brother and stuff in this. It's really well done. So yeah, and I am glad he didn't pass away until after he made Addams Family Values. I'm glad we got that, before that happened, because we get two of these wonderful performances from him, and of course his amazing work in the brilliant Street Fighter movie. He's the best thing about the Street Fighter movie too, because that's a terrible movie. He's great in it.
I don't know that movie. You have to put it on the list. I'll have to check Aeroplane manually, so I'll do that in a minute. As in just Googling Aeroplane. Unfortunately, there was an episode of The West Wing called 1,000 Aeroplanes or something, so it's hard to like.
If you put the exclamation mark after the word airplane, it considers it the movie. I found that cheat when I was doing Googles.
Oh no, I did do that. I still got that. But anyway. That's fine. There is a face that looks familiar. Let me see about him. Oh, it's because he was in Back to the Future Part 2. It's really difficult because again, I don't think it's particularly clean, but scenes like the one where he's tricked by the mother, and she's like, "Yeah, but think about how you feel," and he's like, "I feel annoyed and frustrated and angry." It is Fester.
Yeah,
he's so good in that scene, and that scene is so good. And it goes on a bit long, but I quite like the dance. I thought it was quite I don't know, just something I like when Uncle Fester goes full Uncle Fester.
Yeah.
So that's why I like the dance. So I think he's really good, and there's some good ideas. It's just again as with this whole movie, it's the execution, like the idea of the impact it all has on him. And when he's stuck in the hotel and he's calling the game show hotline for, all the time. That's a funny, interesting idea. Yeah. We just don't get enough time exploring the impact of this all on him. But the stuff that we do get of that in those moments, because there's also, him watching the home movie in the vault and saying, I didn't treat you right, I apologize, and being really kind of sentimental and sweet. Those things are all done really well. It's just they're done really well in individual scenes as opposed to a clean execution across the whole movie.
Mm-hmm. I also thought they did a really good job, because a lot of the plots of this movie, it's funny how all of them are just how that person relates to Fester, because I really liked what this movie did for Fester and the two kids, the way he related to them, and even though arguably Wednesday from minute one was the most suspicious, just immediately didn't believe that he was really Uncle Fester. And admittedly, we have the moment where we reveal that Morticia's suspicious too. She's just being a bit quieter about it. But Wednesday is just openly I don't know if you are who you say you are from minute one. Yeah, he wins her over. They start hanging out and he helps them with the play. And I don't know, there's something very sweet about what they do with that. And I think that arc is probably one of the cleaner ones. It's probably one of the better executed ones. Because I like that they do that moment where he has to sort of choose between the plan to steal the money and the kids' play, and he chooses the play. So yeah, Chris is looking something up. I think are you doing your IMDb search right now?
Yeah, basically, what I'm really enjoying Google's AI overview is just trying to come up with new ways to tell me people didn't appear in the West Wing. Because I've just opened all the cast and I'm just adding the West Wing to their names, and it's just leading to Lloyd Bridges did not appear in the West Wing. I'll read that one last. Jonathan Banks is an actor, but he did not appear in the West Wing. Julie Haggerty is known to have not appeared in the West Wing, and my favourite one, because there's a slight tone of "you're pissing me off now" from Google, which is Robert Hayes is not part of the main West Wing cast.
There you go.
Just getting shitty.
Yeah, that's very good.
Yeah, I agree with you. I thought the scenes with like I say, I like it when Uncle Festers, and I think there's some really good. I'm just repeating myself, but the more we talk about it, the more I realise I think the movie's actually got some lovely and wonderful ideas. It's just the execution of them, which goes to Dan. Why was it such a hit then? And is it because even if it feels like a collection of sketches or those ideas are executed really well in scenes, those scenes, those sketches are really strong. They are really funny. If you just remember those, you remember them fondly. There's a lot of iconic moments in it. Do we think that's why the film was such a success? Like,
yeah,
is that it?
I think maybe, and I do also think I mean the main thing this movie had to do was be funny, and it is funny. It's funny top to bottom. Like, it's not maybe it's not as gag a minute as something like An Airplane, and its humor derives from a very different place. It's not a overt comedy in exactly the same way many of those movies are, but it's not far off. It's very, very well thought out, in my opinion. I think they did it. I'm really impressed with it. I like moments like when Fester first comes into the house and Morticia helps him unpack, and he thinks he's going to be caught because he's brought all these very suspicious items, but actually for an Addams, having dynamite in your suitcase is pretty standard. So she's like, oh, okay. Well, it's like she's almost less suspicious once she goes through his luggage.
Yeah, no, she's upset at the notion that he thought they'd have run out of cyanide or something.
Yeah, that's right. She's like, oh, cyanide. And he's like, I can explain. And she's like, no, that's come on, Fester. As if we don't have our own cyanide. It's brilliant. It's a great moment. He had travel cyanide. You need travel cyanide. So yeah, it's brilliant. And like things like when they go dressed up and someone says to Wednesday, who are you dressed as? And she goes, oh, a homicidal maniac. They look just like everyone else. It's just, or when she's about to electrocute Pugsley and they're playing a game called it's called like Can You See God or something like that. Because she's about to basically kill Pugsley, and the mum comes in and she's like, "No, we've got to go." And she's like, "But mum, I was about to electrocute Pugsley." So it's really funny. Is my point?
Yeah, and she's like, "Okay." Then they like electrocute him a bit.
They do it together.
Dan,
have you found a link?
I have exciting news. News.
So good. Do it.
James Hong played the Japanese general in Aeroplane, which we reviewed last week.
We did.
And he was also in 2 episodes of The West Wing as the Chinese ambassador.
Incredible. Right, so we have good news though. So basically, just Brick and Johnny English, which means we each brought one non-West Wing adjacent movie to the table this year. So we had one
someone in Hercules. I think I would need to check Hercules, but yeah, I won't do that now. But
we had one gimme each, and the rest were all related to the West Wing. So your theme has been maintained. There is a cast member in all of the movies we watched this year, bar 2, that's shared with a hit sort of 2000s drama, The West Wing. So yeah, I think the movie's very funny. Is my point, and I do think though that what they sort of learn more of, and what they figure out more when they do the sequel, is that it does work its best when it's the Addams Family forced to contend with the real world, so to speak. So, like Wednesday Addams selling the lemonade, is it made out of real lemons? I don't know. Are your Girl Scout cookies made out of real Girl Scouts? Like that is when this works at its best. When they go to the school for the play and they're like spraying blood on everyone, like just forcing the Addams to interact with the rest of the world is amazing and always leads to funny stuff. But one thing that kept niggling at my brain, Chris, is this just one joke 100 times over? That's what I couldn't decide. Because is the joke always the Addams are the opposite? Where a normal family, loves, beauty and life. They hate that. They love things that are ugly and dead, like Morticia snipping not the ends of her roses off, but the heads, because they're too beautiful. She doesn't want those. She wants the stems, the dead, the death. Is that the same joke as every other joke in this movie, or are they different? I couldn't quite decide because they all come from the exact same source.
I don't think so. I think that's the texture of the movie. That's the notion of the Addams Family. I think if this, to give the movie its credit on this, personally, I think if it was going to repeat jokes, we'd have a ball smashing into the neighbour's house 50 times over in this movie, or every time someone threw something it would go through and smash the neighbour's window. I think there is a lot of opportunities for what you're talking about. Maybe the running bit of the kids trying to kill each other, but even that, to some degree, I think they do different things with.
But when you boil it, so I guess what I'm saying though is more like when boiled down, are all the jokes coming from the same idea? More than are they physically the same joke? Because, like, for example, Uncle Knick-Knack hit Uncle Knick-Knack's winter clothes, Uncle Knick-Knack's summer clothes, Uncle Knick-Knack, it's a body bag. Like, is that joke ultimately coming from the same exact place as, like, are those, cookies made of real Girl Scouts? Are we not just doing the same thing? Like, that's what I couldn't quite shake.
But I do. But surely the nature of the movie, its target audience, etc., you forgive it for that, because we didn't on the Flintstones review complain about how every joke boiled down to this modern life thing in a prehistoric world. I mean, maybe we did talk about it a little bit.
I think we did a little. If I'm being completely honest, I think we did.
But I think the Flintstones does that more than the Addams Family does here, I think.
Yeah, and I think that if we're pulling that comparison as well, I think, like, the variation on what those jokes can do, there's definitely more wiggle room here for variation. Does that make sense? Like, they are coming to the same thing when you boil them down, but I think you have to boil these jokes down further to get them to the same place, whereas those Flintstones jokes, they often were literally the same point. So maybe, yeah. I don't know, it was just something that niggled at me. I couldn't. I didn't even know 100% that I agreed with that thought, but it did bother me it came up in my brain a few times as I watched.
It is stunning, isn't it? Like, given these flaws that we're talking about, how... Because actually, when I was like, maybe it's just the scenes are really good. How does the movie survive? And sort of, in answering that question, we've ended up talking about another flaw. I think it's the fact that it's funny and the cast are amazing. That's what's carrying this movie.
Yeah, and I do think I think it's one thing the third thing that we have already said, but you didn't include there, is also that the ideas are good. Like, the idea of the long lost brother and the way he fits back into the family, and there are individual scenes that are very sweet or, like, endearing with Fester, where you see him joining in with the family again, and, like, it is very cathartic to see his, Gordon's quote unquote mother, see her come up at the end, because it's a kids movie, and ultimately she's Cruella de Vil. You know what I mean? She's the villain. She's been there to spoil everyone's fun. She made everyone miserable. Like, even though the actual reality of that is, that's a really, really brutal death, and maybe she didn't quite deserve that. But, like, from the perspective of a kid watching this, it's like, drag the villain off into an untimely doom. Who cares? Do you know what I mean? Like, there's some of that in it. So there is a lot of fun to be had in this movie, and it is a weirdly joyous movie.
Although it is bold, isn't it, when you think about the logistics of it, which are, my wife's in trouble. Kids, come on, we've got to go and save Mum. Well, I'm gonna go save her. You dig 2 graves out here for if the plan works. Well, hold on, shouldn't we? Why don't we invest our energy in saving her as well? No. You dig the graves. Yeah, it's gotta work. Yeah, don't worry.
Yeah. I like the setup at the end for a potential sequel, the reveal of the baby, which they do have they have a baby in the next movie, which is a big part of that movie and a very fun part of that movie actually. The introduction of a new Addams is well handled, I think, and exploring what that looks like is great. I'm really looking forward to coming back to this to do season 2 movie 2 at some point, because like I said, that is the one I have the fonder memories of. They even bring back the little, the Girl Scout. They bring her back in the next movie in a really big way.
Oh, really?
Yeah, she's a huge part of the next movie. Yeah, I know. I'm not sure if she's supposed to be the same character or if they just liked that actress and gave her a role. But I like to think it's the same character. I like to think that same character has been tortured or bothered by Wednesday Addams many times in her life. Because that's the other thing. In the next movie, Wednesday and Pugsley are a bigger part of that movie. And I think they really zone in on what Christina Ricci's doing, which is a really smart thing to do, because she's great. And she, as great as she is in this movie, she's even better in the next one. It's stunning.
That's kind of crazy to me, though, because I would watch this movie and have it be a success and go, we need to lead on Christopher Lloyd. So do they also lead on Christopher Lloyd then? Or?
Yes, there are sort of. I would say that the next movie has two major plots. Christopher Lloyd is the lead of one, and Wednesday is the lead of the other. I mean, I guess at some point you'll probably watch a trailer, so it wouldn't be a crazy spoiler to sort of reveal that there's a lady from the normal world that sort of falls in love with Fester, and they're suspicious she's really after their money. But Fester's very smitten. That's kind of the plot for Fester. And Pudsley and Wednesday go to a normal kids' summer camp, which they view as a prison. And, yeah, the sunny, shiny camp counselors do not vibe with Wednesday and Pudsley's way of life. So the movie, it's brilliant. It's genuine. I'm really confident we'll enjoy that one when we get to it. But that's the sort of setup for that movie, and it works really well, really, really well. Nice. Yeah. So if are we sort of wrapping? I don't know if I have any more thoughts on this movie other than just that it's funny. It's great. Oh yeah, with the visuals. It's
the dance.
Oh, the dance. Yes, we did say we'd talk about the dance. I love the dance. I think it's super fun. Does it go on for too long? Maybe. But I really like it because I liked the payoff of seeing those two come together in a really genuinely feeling brotherly way, even though it doesn't really make sense that Fester, if he is Gordon, knows that dance. I love it. This is a brilliant scene. I think it's really funny. How did you feel about it?
Nice. I liked it. I liked it for the again. I feel like apologies, people. I feel like I'm repeating myself a lot here. Uncle Fester did it. Like for me, it was that scene was like, right, there is categorically no denying now it's him, and he is actually Uncle Fester. And I don't know how they're going to do it and how they're going to build to this, but how they're going to reveal this. But he is categorically Uncle Fester,
yes.
And there's so much joy and stuff in that dance.
Yeah,
and if you're sat there not convinced of that, because again, part of the reason I'm convinced of that is the I know Christopher Lloyd played Uncle Fester. I didn't know that he played Gordon. So I'm sat there, my expectation is filled by that knowledge. If you watch this movie with none of that external knowledge, I think you might watch that dance scene and it might annoy you because you might be going, but this doesn't make any fucking sense. Like, he's an imposter. What are they doing? Because of the execution of the overall story, as we've already discussed.
Yeah, right.
But in terms of, did I enjoy watching that dance personally? Yeah, I really enjoyed it. I thought it was really funny. I thought what they did with the knives was funny. Yes. There's so much joy in it. There's just so much joy in it, and I really liked that.
Yeah, I would agree. I would 100% agree. Let's talk very briefly about the visuals, just because I think it's first time directing Barry Sonnenfeld, and obviously he went on to direct Men in Black, and he definitely has a style, and you can see it developing here. He has a very He has a distinct look. His use of color has always really fascinated me. His movies are like black and white movies without being black and white. I've never really understood how he does it. And it sort of makes him perfect for this because the movie's color palette apes the sitcom, which was filmed just before color became prominent in television. So the sitcom was black and white. So I guess you could look at this and go, oh, it's like an homage to like, you know, the sitcom, which was black and white, so that the movie is very much drained of colour to give it this very specific look. And the colour only ever comes in when they're sort of not in their environment, when they're in the sort of the outside world, and then suddenly the world is a lot more colourful. And the Addams themselves seem sort of black and white, which is kind of an amazing trick. But you look at his other movies that this guy's directed, like you look at the first Men in Black, it also kind of feels very black and white in its color palette. It's not just the outfits; it's the settings, the locations. So this is clearly this guy's taste. So he was pretty much like the perfect person to direct this movie. I think it's really good. I think the visual effects hold up. I think Thing looks really good. It's obviously a guy.
I was gonna say that, yeah.
It's obviously like a guy in a green suit with his hand doing the thing, and they just film it and paint him out. But like it works really well, and that guy gives a pretty good hand performance, I guess is the word.
I think the set design is also incredibly clever.
Yes.
Like the vault, for example, there are I don't know how they did it for sure, but there are there are camera tricks or set design mirror tricks you could do to make that look expansive, and it works well. I think.
Yes.
I think the house feels very big, very gothic. I think the world feels very real, and like you say, there's a lot of great VFX that still holds up to this day. I completely agree with you about The Thing. But I also think the actual set design is really, really strong, as are the costumes as well.
Yes.
Like we don't often call out costumes on this podcast,
No.
but I think the costume work here is brilliant.
Yeah, production design in general did a good job, and obviously they borrowed a lot of the aesthetic from the original comic and of course the sitcom. But yeah, they nailed it. They really did nail it. Also, from a music perspective, obviously, the theme tune to the original sitcom is iconic, and its use here is perfect. And I actually really like the way they use it at the beginning, because the movie opens, and I'd forgotten the movie opened this way, with carolers outside the Addams house singing, and we slowly pan up, and then we see the Addams family waiting to pour a cauldron of something on them, and it, diddle-dun, diddle-dun.
Yeah,
So good.
That confused the fuck out of me as well. I was like, this isn't a Christmas film, is it?
Yeah, I mean, for a minute I worried that I'd forgotten it was, and that we should have been watching it in December. But or as usually happens for us, October. Chris and I have now
even earlier this year.
Yeah, it will be. Chris and I have a really funny tradition of watching Christmas films much earlier in the year because of this podcast.
This will be the worst. Like Christmas comes because we've been doing breaks now, but we technical difficulties which we'll talk about pending. We'll record the next season as soon as possible, and I think the Christmas episode comes up relatively quickly, and it'll be the first year where even where we've been early, especially with how early Christmas starts now. You could make an argument of, Christmas starts here, but we may end up recording these at a point where we are literally, watching a Christmas movie with sunshine on our face.
Yeah. Well, essentially in summer, like in August, basically. Yeah, we'll see what happens. But yeah, it's there's a risk of that this year. But yeah, on the whole, I thought the music was used really well, and I loved the way they used it there. That scene was slightly confusing. I did have a brief moment of like, oh god, is this a Christmas movie? Have I forgot? But I think, what's the equivalent if you don't want to make it the carolers? You've got to make it like one of those people that knock on your door to tell you ask you if you've found Jesus. And I think if you choose to do that, then the movie becomes the Addams Family or anti-religion or whatever. Like that becomes the premise of the movie. Whereas if you choose carolers, which is like the most common next thing you'd think of as a thing that knocks on your door that you don't want there, that's sunshine and happiness. Because you could do it as it's a guy trying to sell them double glazing, but then that just feels like they hate people who sell double glazing, and we all do. So I think they of the options of things that could be knocking on your door, that you would be potentially an Addams Family would be potentially dismissive of. I think that's the best choice, because I think you raise more questions than you answer if it's any sort of if it's like any sort of religion that knocks on your door. And I think if it's a salesman, it doesn't quite play as well. So I think they nailed it, I think, with the carolers choice, even if it does leave me in this exact position worried that I'd accidentally chosen a Christmas movie. But this
is quite niche, isn't it? They couldn't have predicted. No one was in the room going, but hold on, what if Dan Doolan worries?
Yeah, exactly. But to its credit, that again, the point I was getting to, or the main point I even brought that scene up with, was just the use of the music. So good, so iconic. Straight away, they cut it in. They knew what people sort of is iconic from from that original series. And it is, and it was, and it remains iconic. Shall we? Do you have any other overall thoughts you want to give, or are we happy that we've covered the film and want to move into the trivia?
No, and I almost don't want to sum it up, because I feel like the sentences I would sum it up with I've said about 50 times over the course of this podcast.
That's fair. Yeah. Let's do it.
Yeah. Let's triv it up.
Let me give you some trivia. So, Chris, tell me how you feel about Festus arc. No, I'm kidding. Right. So, for those who do not know, the origin.
I think the problem with the movie, Dan, is that there's a load of good ideas, and I love when Uncle Festus.
So for anyone who wants some background or history on Addams Family in general, very quickly, the Addams Family originated in a New Yorker single-panel comic drawn by a gentleman called Charles Addams in 1938. The characters didn't have names at the time. They were usually just like single-panel jokes about like macabre things, and became very popular in the early 60s. An NBC executive called David Leary, or no, not David Leary, sorry, David Levy, put a little pin in him as well, because we'll come back to him later. But he stumbled across a book of, sort of collecting these comics, like an Addams Family like collection, because it had been obviously this is in the 60s now, and they started in 38. So it'd been popular enough in the newspaper, in the New Yorker, for a long time, that they'd now done a book collecting the comics. And he found it and thought it was a great, funny thing, and really wanted to turn it into a sitcom. And he took it to Charles Addams to negotiate all that. So the TV adaptation then happens, which is arguably how they got as household famous, name famous as they did. But it's really funny to look at because it lasted just 2 seasons. Now, admittedly, back then, 2 seasons was still 64 episodes. But it's kind of iconic because actually the TV adaptation is what made so much of the stuff we think of and associate as Addams Family now came from the adaptation in the TV show rather than the comic. The characters' names, it leaned a little less on them just being outright evil and made their sort of macabre tone lighter. It heightened the comedy. Charles Addams actually wasn't thrilled with this, and he criticised the show. He said their versions of the characters were half as evil as his versions from the comics, which is a strange thing to say. But yeah, I mean, it's true, but it's a sitcom. But the funny thing is, obviously, the show ends up airing in 64 on ABC. A week after its first episode airs, CBS began airing The Munsters, a sitcom about a family of monsters based on a comic that had been somewhat inspired by the Addams Family to start with, only using sort of universal monsters. So there's like a Bride of Frankenstein, there's a sort of Dracula figure, there's a werewolf figure. CBS used the universal monsters to create a sitcom. And it came out of less than 6 days it aired after the Addams Family. That also... Go on.
I actually looked up the monsters because while I was watching this, I was going, "Oh, did they do an Addams Family pilot for a new Addams Family TV series that Dan and I really liked that never got a full series, but we loved the pilot." And I was like, and then I looked up like what other Addams Family franchise stuff there'd been, and I couldn't see anything that fit that bill. So I was like, what was that then? And then I was like, oh, was it The Monsters? And it was. It was the Mockingbird Lane
Mockingbird
series
Lane, I'd forgotten about that.
Yeah, that the guy who did Pushing Daisies did. And we loved it. And yeah, so I went on a bit of a weird Monsters tangent as a result of this movie.
Well, so you'll have probably figured out from your research then that Monsters were a comic in like the 40s, like like a few years after the Addams Family had become popular. And it was kind of inspired by the Addams Family. But the irony of this is, of course, Monsters ended up posting better ratings than the Addams Family during this time. Both shows ran for exactly 2 seasons, and they ran completely alongside each other for those 2 years. They both aired about 60-odd, 70-ish episodes. I think Monsters ended up with 5-6 more episodes than Addams Family, but almost identical. And they were both cancelled at the exact same time. No official explanation as to why Addams Family was cancelled. Speculation is that it was related to that they were adopting colour programming the next year, and nobody felt that the Addams Family would really fit colour because it would ruin the aesthetic. So it just ended up getting cancelled. And of course, the funny thing about this is because the Monsters got better ratings and then syndicated, because it hit 70 where the Addams Family was at 60-odd, and I think 70 was the line for syndication at the time. By the time we get to the 90s and they're looking to make a movie, one of the big barriers is people were saying in Hollywood, well, the Monsters is more of a household name. Who wants the Addams Family? Because the Addams Family were almost perceived as the copy, and that the Munsters was the original, despite the fact that not being true at all. So it's really, really interesting. So yeah, the Addams Family also got a short-lived, as I mentioned earlier, in the 70s Hanna-Barbera animated series, but that lasted one series, like did 16 episodes, so we won't worry too much about that. Although I did see that as a kid and really liked it. Had a really weird art style, but anyway. So yeah, jump massively forward, and we're in the 80s, and Scott Rudin, the guy that ultimately produced this movie, he was a development executive at Fox, and he pitched a feature film adaptation of the Addams Family. But Fox couldn't wrestle the rights away from Orion Pictures, who were at the time looking to do a new series. But they struggled to get the series off the ground. And in the end, they decided... Well, when Scott Rudin left Fox, he went to Orion and specifically said, now I'm not working with Fox. Can I make this movie with you? He was absolutely determined to make this movie happen. So Orion agreed to do the picture for $25 million. That's the budget. They contacted Tim Burton, Terry Gilliam, bunch of directors, but unfortunately no one was free. Burton specifically was working on Batman Returns at that point. Now, they eventually settled on Barry Sonnenfeld, who I think did a great job here. Big fan of Sonnenfeld, and well, at some point we'll cover Men in Black on this podcast because that was a huge film from my youth and I loved that movie. So eventually we will cover that one too. But Scott Rudin didn't let Sonnenfeld forget that he wasn't the first choice when this movie started production, because every day there was a different director's name on the back of his chair. Which is one of my favourite practical jokes I've ever heard of on a set. Names including Joe Dante, Terry Gilliam, David Lynch, and Tim Burton. Were all names that rotated through on his chair.
That's amazing.
Every day. I like that joke very much. Yeah. So eventually he gets around to...
Can I just...
Of course.
Actually, no, go on. Finish the trip. No, finish it.
Well, I was just going to say that eventually Orion agreed to make the movie, as I said, for $25 million. They hire Barry Sonnenfeld, and we end up looking at casting. There's not a huge amount on casting, but Kim Basinger was originally set to play Morticia. She dropped out in the end to make The Marrying Man, which is a movie I didn't know existed, so I can't... I mean, who knows what that did for her career at the time, but like looking at that now, it feels like a mistake, but sure. Cher apparently campaigned for the role of Morticia, but didn't get it. And obviously it eventually went to Angelica Houston, who is wonderful, and absolutely you would never replace. Danny Elfman was...
No, but I could see Cher stinking.
Yeah. Not a million miles
sense
wrong.
as
No,
an
I
idea.
agree. It's not a million miles from the mark with Cher. I think she understood the character clearly, and that she fitted that role reasonably well. I could have seen that working. Sonnenfeld wanted Danny Elfman to score the film, but he declined. Presumably, he was also presumably working on Batman. But the funny thing about all of this is, of course, Burton and Elfman would ultimately circle back round to the Addams Family in 2022, because both of them directed and did music for Wednesday over on Netflix. So it just took them 31 years, but they did eventually get there and work on Addams Family. The original person offered Uncle Fester, Chris, was Anthony Hopkins. Jesus. I'm sorry. No, incorrect. I love Anthony Hopkins. That's terrible.
Yeah, that would have been a bad choice.
I think so. The next immediate choice for Fester was Christopher Lloyd, but they were having trouble getting him to commit because he just shot 2 Back to the Future sequels back to back over 2 years. So they looked at Danny DeVito, Jack Nicholson, Robert Duvall, Michael Caine, Sean Connery, Rodney Dangerfield. And they were all sort of on the back burner in case Lloyd passed. But Lloyd admitted that even though he was exhausted, he couldn't turn this one down because he was absolutely convinced it would be a hit. And he was correct. Spoiler alert for later on. The movie made a lot of money. So yeah, I thought that was very interesting. Before we get to production, now I've sort of covered casting, because there wasn't any much information about Raul Julia, for Gomez Addams. There doesn't seem to have been any, at least famous, alternate casting options for him. Did you want to slip in your thought was?
Yes, I was going to slip in some side triv.
Oh, I love a bit of side triv,
to what you said, which is, Dan, that Rewind Reviews episode number 73 is the episode where we have already discussed Men in Black.
You know what? I knew this day would come. I've been worried about this for a long time, where we would cover a movie and forget we covered it and then pick it.
I think it's happened once before as well, but I can't remember the scenario.
This is gonna happen more. This is gonna happen more and more. I'm very sorry, everyone. Okay, I guess at some point we'll talk about Men in Black 2. Who knows?
There's no need to apologise. It's just it just amused me because, but also it's that amazing second guess of, because I've had it where I've gone, have we talked about that? And I've had to look it up to check whether we have or not. When you said it, I was like, I'm sure we had. And then to be fair, it wasn't your choice, which is surprising, but it was my choice actually. But anyway,
yeah, but I will have been very happily. That's definitely a film I would have chose ultimately at some point. If you hadn't. So, yeah. All right, let's talk about the production then. So, most of this film, very funnily enough, was shot on stages 3 and 8 at the Hollywood Center Studios in LA, which is the exact same studio the original series was filmed in. So, from the 60s to the 90s, Addams Family has dwelled on those same studios in those same studio spaces. It's really cool. I love that.
That's great.
The set for the house, the exterior, was built for $100,000, which is a lot of money. And now we get to my my favorite part of the trivia, which is, I'm just going to title this Long and Arduous. So in her 2014 memoir, Watch Me, Angelica Houston described filming of the Addams Family as long and arduous. Seems like a lot of people didn't enjoy their time working on this movie, Chris. There was, let's just say there was, no one's fault. This isn't an X-Men situation where the director was a bit of a nightmare on set and made everyone miserable. This is just a sequence of unfortunate events that no one could control, except one, which we'll talk about. But so the director of photography, Owen Rusman, quit with 3 months left in production. His replacement, Gail Tattersall, was rushed to hospital within weeks of starting. Sonnenfeld eventually took over the cinematography task while also dealing with directing. Raul Julia had a blood vessel burst in his eye, which led to them having to shoot around him for a period of time while he was recovering. It gets worse. 3 weeks into directing, Barry Sonnenfeld was talking to a studio executive who was concerned about the budget for the film when he felt a tremendous pressure in his chest as if someone was blowing up a balloon inside me. He then passed out. He also dealt with sciatica during filming, and production was shut down for a period of several days when his wife had emergency surgery in New York and he flew out to be with her. Did someone...
That all sounds mad.
Well, did someone, upset a witch or something before the production started? Did Barry Sonnenfeld, knock a witch over in the street? And he was like, sorry about that. I walked on and she was like, you will be. And she, pulled out a voodoo doll or something. I don't know what happened. It's this just feels cursed. So much went wrong. And it does unfortunately get a little bit worse from here, which is Angelica Houston. Now, the reason she specifically described this process as long and arduous is different to everyone else. Obviously, she will have had the same barriers around production that I just discussed, but she had a bigger issue. It was decided that Morticia should have eyes which sort of slanted upwards at the sides, like the actress who played the character in the original sitcom. Now, instead of casting for that, they'd already cast Angelica Houston when they made this decision. So they achieved this effect by attaching elastic straps to the back of her head and using fabric tabs glued to her temples, which would pull the corners of her eyes upwards to create that look. A second strap was then added to balance the appearance of the lower part of her face with the upper, but the bands caused extensive discomfort, and Houston, unless she removed them at lunchtime, would suffer severe headaches and rashes later in the day. Removing the bands for a break entailed hours of extra work, and reapplying them with the makeup and the wig, which obviously had massive effects on production. And on top of this, the bands would snap at the slightest turns of her head, causing yet more grueling repair time. Eventually, she learned to pivot and turn her feet without moving her upper body or head. Dreadful. That sounds deeply uncomfortable. It sounds like it wasted a bunch of time and it wasted a bunch of money, and I don't think it's for any gain. I don't know what the purpose of that was. Nadia said, this is a good point, that obviously some of her performance is that she is a very still character, and that now we know that's because she was worried the elastic bands keeping her head together would snap. And I would argue that is possibly true, but I would rather a comfortable actor and a fractionally worse performance than the other way around. That's just me.
Yeah, absolutely. That's correct.
It gets worse though, because she also, to have that figure, had to wear a metal corset. And And she had to have like gauze eyelets, which we've already talked about, the neck tucks, and fake nails added daily. She told Entertainment Weekly, "Come afternoon, I'll be prone to a really good headache from my various bondages. And because I couldn't lie down in that corset or rest, it was fairly exhausting." Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, that's mad.
I don't know why we put her through that.
That shouldn't be allowed to happen.
No, shouldn't happen then. Shouldn't happen now. Hopefully that no one ever has to go through that again. So with all those delays, because from all the stuff I mentioned, the various people being sick or replaced, like the AD, no, not the AD, the director of photography, the DOP, being replaced twice, Sonnenfeld having to do it himself, then Sonnenfeld had to leave because his wife was sick, because of Raul Julia having to stop, all the extra time they lost dealing with Angelica Houston's eyes. The movie, you'll be surprised to hear, Chris, started to go over schedule and over budget. So the movie was budgeted around $25 million, as I mentioned earlier, but it was looking like it was going to cost another $5 million. Now, Orion Pictures had some recent hits under their belt, Silence of the Lambs, Dances with Wolves, but they'd also had a severe downturn in their financial luck, because they'd also had a lot of very big flops, which had sort of put the company in a financially difficult place. That's why that conversation with Barry Sonnenfeld happened earlier in production about where it was going. So they decided, mid-production, to cut their losses. Now, they didn't cancel the movie. They simply sold The Addams Family, the film, and all of the rights to Paramount Pictures mid-production. The filmmakers were not aware of this. Paramount were now running the production, and no one on set knew. This all just happened behind the scenes. They only found out at a later date from a journalist.
Wow.
So Orion Pictures sold it, and I guess it didn't affect anything, so why tell them? I guess their money was still coming in, and now they had their extra $5 million to finish the movie. So I guess who cares? Right? The movie still gets made, it gets put out. There's a different logo at the front. I guess from the perspective of the people on set, who's signing those checks doesn't matter. But it does feel like something they should have been told about. But hey-ho.
Absolutely does.
So Orion appeared nowhere on any of this movie's stuff, because Orion sold the thing completely to Paramount. And that's what's really funny about this, is obviously, if they'd have held out, the payoff was big. So this movie's budget ultimately was $30 million. I'm going to tell you right now, Chris, a little spoiler. We're not quite at it yet, but just a tiny little tease. It made $191 million at the box office.
Wow, jeez.
And I think, let me double check, is that? Yeah, that only includes $78 million international, so I don't know how full that is either, because that's in that weird period, late 80s, early 90s, when we didn't get international data, so it might have even made more than that. So if they'd have just held out, that extra $5 million would have been worth it, to say the least. Wow. So yeah. So once the film was finished production, they did some test screenings and reworked bits, as is pretty standard. But one thing that was massively changed was the Mamushka sequence was significantly longer in the original cut, but was shortened following a very negative response from test audiences. Yeah, it's funny. Sure.
Still not short enough for Dan.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, evidently. I liked it. I was worried it was too long. I had that weird fictional family in my head around me judging me for putting it on. We've covered that. I said that. That's my thing that I said about 8 times on this podcast. So to do some more general trivia about Addams Family and this film particularly, the media speculation over the years was that Charles Addams, the guy who created the Addams Family, had designed Morticia after his first wife, Barbara Jean Day, but he hadn't met her when he created the character, and in an interview in 1981, he acknowledged what the answer was, which is that Morticia reflected the qualities he was attracted to, and because of this, the woman he married later resembled the character. I just thought that was really funny and had to include it.
Yeah.
That's, yeah. Yeah.
No, that's. I don't know if that's I suppose it's not. That's just. Logical seems a weird word to use, but that just all seems very logical.
Yeah, makes perfect sense. Cause and effect. Make no smoke without fire. So, according to Angelica Houston, Christina Ricci was actually the one who came up with Wednesday's position of sleeping with her arms folded across her chest. So, like, that child went to that set. That was not in the script. She made that choice. The girl's a genius. I love Christina Ricci.
Absolutely.
In fact, her portrayal has sort of forever shifted the tone for other Wednesday portrayals because she leaned into the macabre tradition of Charles Addams' work, because Lisa Loring, who played Wednesday in the original series, played Wednesday as sort of a sweet, happy girl with oddities, like a contrast. Like, she seemed like a normal girl, but she had a pet spider, or was beheading her dolls. And that was like where the comedy or surprise came from. She seemed like a sweet normal girl, then she's beheading dolls. Whereas here, Christina Ricci chose to play her as a dangerous girl, incredibly smart, probably the smartest person in the room, sullen demeanor, deadpan monotone delivery. And that is pretty much how the character has been portrayed since, whether it be the animated films they made a few years ago, or the Netflix Wednesday series. Christina Ricci shaped that character in this movie to something different to what she was in the original series. And I just want to take a second here to admire how much influence that small child had on this character. And I want to, push that point. I don't know how old she was when she made this movie, but she was way too old to be that fucking good at her job. Sorry, way too young.
Yeah,
sorry, way too young. Sorry, to be that fucking good at her job.
Yeah, absolutely. That's fantastic.
Yeah, other small changes from the original series. Grandmama, as she was known in the 1964 series, was Gomez's mother, and her name was Eudora Addams. But in this movie, they made her Morticia's mother, and her name was changed to Esmeralda Frump. That, I think, was to help with the Fester plot, because obviously he's found his long lost brother, and obviously if she's Gomez's mother, that raises a plot line that we don't have time for, because he'd then be reuniting with his mother also, if that makes sense. So that's why they made that choice. Although. Oh wait, what's this? There's a joke in the movie when she says she's still here living in the attic, and Gomez says, "My mother? I thought she was your mother," which is obviously a reference to the fact that in the series she was the other way around. In the series, the Addams had a pet lion named Kitty. Kitty does not appear in the movie, but there's a point in the movie when Gomez cracks a whip and says, "Down, Kitty," as a roar is heard in the vault. So that's a little reference to the original series as well. Last couple of bits. So after the movie premiered, children would frequently recognize Raul Julia as Gomez Addams when in public, which according to him always brought a smile to his face. Julia stated that Gomez Addams was by far his favorite role, and his family have said since that recognition was really meaningful to him in the sort of final months of his life, because he loved performing for children and making them happy. And they sort of were implying that, like, he knew he'd done something that would last with this, and that would, even though he knew he was ill, he knew he'd brought joy to many children, and that would last for a long time. And he was right, and he continues to. I mean, these movies, like I said, still good to this day. So, not perfect, but his performance is just incredible. So yeah.
He's definitely gone too soon, and he, alongside everyone else in this movie, I think as much as you can poke flaws in everything, you can't poke flaws in the cast. They're phenomenal.
No, absolutely. Now, you remember earlier I was talking about David Levy, who was the guy who found the book and made the TV series back in the 60s. He filed a lawsuit against Paramount Pictures after this film was released, because he claimed, and I think correctly, that many of the traits and trademarks of the characters used in this film, including, Gomez's model trains, cousin It, Thing, Lurch's fondness for playing the harpsichord, the tangos with Morticia and Gomez, these are all things that were created for the series. I mean, the characters' names came from the series. And while they had the rights to the original Charles Addams cartoons, he claimed Paramount Pictures did not have the rights to that series. So I think he had a case, and I think this particularly strongly because they settled this out of court. So I assume...
I would suggest so, yeah.
Because I think what that implies to me is that one morning he woke up to the beeping and he opened his curtains and he just saw a truck dumping money on his lawn. Because that is... Yeah, that's pretty specific. But as a result of these rights issues and it being a bit complicated, even though they paid him off, it didn't cover him in all territories. And it took him a while to work this out. It was a bit of a tangled mess. There were problems with the rights to the Addams Family because basically he'd lost some of the rights. Charles Addams had lost some of the rights to the Addams Family to one of his ex-wives. So Orion owned rights, but only in certain territories and only for certain sorts of adaptations. Obviously, there's the original series, which obviously this David Levy guy owned rights from, and then obviously the Charles Addams retained certain rights himself, but he passed just a couple of years before this movie got made. So you're sort of in this weird situation where the rights are very scattered and complicated for the Addams Family, basically. So as a result, the film was not released on DVD outside of 3 countries until 2013.
Oh, wow.
This
what were those 3 countries?
So it was America, North America, Ireland, and Great Britain.
Oh, wow.
Those were the only countries where this had the DVD home release because of the complicated, weird history of this movie's rights and the Addams Family's rights in general, which I think are now united. I think whoever owns the rights now, which I think is probably still Paramount, owns those rights still and can lease it out, which is, I think, how the Netflix show happens. Or maybe it's a Paramount production that they sold to Netflix. I'm not sure. I'll have to double check that. But yeah, that's basically where we're at. I already did the box office, but I usually do it right at the end. But just to remind people, because we usually end on Cars Exist, but we do that right after box office. But just as a reminder, $30 million budget, $191 million return. Paramount singing all the way to the bank. I don't care how much they paid to wrestle this away from Orion, whether they just covered costs or whether they paid extra for the rights. I'm not sure, but my God, was that a good investment. And the second one also made a lot of money, if my memory serves me correctly. I'll double check that in a second. But that means, Chris, we've arrived at, I think, your favourite segment of the show. Because mostly because you get to make a fun noise, but it's time, Chris, for Cars Exist.
Meow.
That was good. Excellent.
Thank you, mate. Appreciate your support, as always.
Yeah, very good. At a glance, Addams Family Values did not make as much money. It still made money, but it didn't make as much money. It looks like it. Wow, there's no international data here. 50 million in the American box office, which doesn't seem like a lot. Its domestic opening was much smaller too. 14 million. Huh. Okay. Well, we'll look at that at some point. So let's do Cars Exist. There's only one piece. It's very small, but the Addams Family car is a 1932 Packard Twin 6. Now, I'm going to make an assumption that that is a direct reference to either the car they had in the comic or the series, because it's a 1932 car. So it just feels like, it's probably from the original comic. So there you go. That was Addams Family, everyone. I had a good time. I'm glad we did it. I liked watching it. I enjoyed my time watching it, and it'll be really interesting now when the new series of Wednesday airs, because I'll probably watch that. I like the first series of Wednesday, to sort of especially when some of the performances, because I know that the family are going to be a bit more involved this year, so I'll be excited to see how they handle some of that.
Yeah, are they really only on second series 2? Well, that's the strike in action, I assume.
It was a few things. Jenny Ortega is obviously really busy, and it was already going to be a bit of a gap, and then the strike also then happened. So it was like it was already going to be 2 years, and then the strike made it 3. So it's been a while. Right. Yeah, no, I'm looking forward to it though. I think it'll be fun. I liked the first series a lot. I thought the first series was really good. I'm sure we give it.
I enjoyed it too.
I'm sure we give it a positive review. And I think I read rightly. Christopher Lloyd's joined the cast this year, not as Fester. Obviously, they've got Fred Armisen for that, but I think Christopher Lloyd's in it. It's a little for funsies.
Is he?
Yeah. Let me see if I'm.
Lloyd.
Is he going to be on Wednesday?
Yeah, he'll be playing a new character called Professor Orloff.
Oh, there you go. Lovely. Yeah, I mean, why not, right? I never saw they a few years ago, like DreamWorks or one of those, those like animation houses did an Addams Family like reboot, like as an animated movie, and they did 2 of them, and I never saw either. And I'm sort of like, that's why I refer to myself as a very casual Addams Family fan, because clearly those didn't attract my attention enough for me to watch them. I wonder if they were any good. Do you reckon they were good?
Well,
shall I look on Rotten Tomatoes?
put them on the list.
Oh no, there's no. We're not watching them for this. I have no memory of them. I'm not gonna risk putting them on here. But let me pull up Rotten Tomatoes. Let's see. Addams Family. Where are we at? The Addams Family from 2019. They made a sequel too. Oh, okay. So the critics gave it 46%, but the audience score is 70.
Okay,
that's interesting.
Yeah. I can see that being something critics were snobby on, though, an Addams Family cartoon. So
yeah, they made 2 of them though, so it must have been all right. It must have been reasonably successful. Anyway, that is all of the stuff. Well, no, it's not. We've got one thing to do, Chris, which is find out where we're going next. I am very excited about this.
Well, should we just quickly, because this factors in slightly, should we just quickly explain technical difficulties? We're hoping to be back in 10 weeks. Is it 10 weeks or 11 weeks?
No, it's a little bit longer than that, because we used to do like 12 or 13 weeks between, because obviously seasons of Korra were varied in length. I can't pull up dates because I don't have access to
That's all right, I can.
I
can. We are due back on the 26th of... That can't be right, because Christmas. Oh, sorry, it's just because you filled it. Yeah. We are due back on the 11th of November.
So, right now, that's the plan. There's nothing that's directly changing that yet, but it was worth us adding a little note at the end of this that my laptop has been dying very publicly. It's basically between the temperatures here and the being a little bit older, the fan isn't working as well as it used to. No matter how much I clean it out, the components are starting to overheat and they're starting to give me trouble. I'm seeing issues potentially with the GPU and the hard drive, and I am not in a position to replace the laptop financially at this point in time. So we are, assuming I can eke it out for a month or 2, then we'll be fine. But if it does die a death in a way that means it is completely unusable, then that may put a delay in our return date. So just as a heads up now, that date Chris just gave in November, that is the current plan. I'm not immediately seeing a reason for that to be different. But should that date come and go and Rewind Reviews not be up, then you will know why. We just sort of cover it now on the off chance, because I need my laptop to edit them. So we could probably keep recording them, I guess, but editing and uploading them will not be possible without my laptop. And I'll be honest with you guys, I'm not sure Chris is up to the challenge of editing them himself.
No, I'm definitely not. Yeah, for anyone thinking that's an option, no, definitely not.
Well, how would you describe yourself as somewhat technically challenged? Somewhat, not fully. I don't think you're like a you know your way around a computer.
I could do, but no. I could do a version. To be honest with you, to be honest with you, more than editing, I don't think I would edit to your standards, but I could whack the 2 audio tracks in Premiere Pro and do a pass and export that as an MP4. It's the uploading, it's the knowing where to put it, it's the scheduling, it's the thumbnails, it's all the rest of it that I couldn't do, more so than the editing. I could probably do a passable pass. Well, no, but then dealing with audio levels, no, maybe I couldn't. Maybe I'm underestimating. But I would be more nervous about everything else connected to it.
Yeah, the thumbnails are a pain. I've got a thing with the thumbnails, I would say, for Rewind Review specifically, is that they are... I've pre-made templates. So when I make the thumbnail now for Rewind Reviews, I open what do you call it? Is it a PDS file, whatever it's called, like a Photoshop file, and that already has the layout. I just stick the poster of whatever movie we're doing in it, and then in terms of the podcast, the video version at least, I literally I have 3 files. I have an intro, the middle, and then an outro, and I just line those up over it because I created those assets right at the beginning, and now I just throw them on top of the sound. It's but rendering
give it a go.
Well, look. We're not that desperate yet. I wouldn't want to put Chris through the stress. I wouldn't want to put Chris anywhere near through the stress of that. To be honest with you, that's he's busy enough.
No,
So,
all joking aside, time is my other and that's not me saying Dan's got more free time than me. That's not
I
what
currently
I'm saying
do.
at all.
I currently
I'm
do.
just
That's true.
I'm just saying time would be a factor for me.
But we'll keep that in mind.
but
with that sort of said, where are we at with next week with your next pod?
I'm doing something that I think I have done before, and I think I feel like I've done it recently, but I'm doing it again. And look, there's no pressure for you to ever do this, Dan, but I'm doing it again because I will talk you through where I've been at, and I will basically I will reveal now, Dan. I'm giving you the choice, but I'm giving you the choice of 4. Now here's where my thinking's been at. First of all, I thought start of the new season. Let's just go classic. Let's go classic rewind reviews. Let's do a film that I saw in the cinema and then I had on video, DVD, I think video, literally, and really loved. But it has a question of, will that hold up? Not quite sure about it. And then I thought about doing one over the course of this episode, actually. I thought about doing one as a joke, which was going to be... well, I'll give you all choices at the end, but I'll explain what the joke was at the end. And then I realised that there is a huge movie star, arguably, according to some lists, the biggest movie star of sort of peak Rewind Reviews 90s time, which is Tom Hanks. And the only Tom Hanks movies we've ever done is animated, is Toy Story. And I thought, well, that seems crazy. Like, let's chuck a Tom Hanks movie in. And then I didn't know if it would help you out if I chose a film which probably wouldn't have that much triv connected to it. But the film I thought of for that, I think, will be a difficult discussion because I'm gonna go right ahead and say I imagine there's shit in that movie that doesn't hold up and is problematic. So the choices are: the classic Rewind Reviews choice is Bruce Almighty.
Oh yeah.
The joke choice was to go new season, new start. We're leaving all the bits and all the running jokes from this season behind us, and then choose The Social Network, which is obviously an Aaron Sorkin movie, and he cameos in that, and obviously he cameoed in The West Wing. The Tom Hanks movie is The Terminal, and then the movie which I think would have little triv, but might be difficult to discuss, is the Tim Allen movie Jungle to Jungle.
Oh dear.
So Dan, your 4 choices are Bruce Almighty, The Social Network, The Terminal, or Jungle to Jungle.
I mean, one day it'd be nice for you to just commit to a choice yourself. That'd be lovely.
Well, and one day it'd be nice if you gave me some choice, Dan. But here we are.
Oh, well, no, it's my turn. I make the choice. Then it's your turn. You make the choice.
No, I've chosen. But the advantage here is I've chosen 4 movies. I wouldn't. Do you know what I mean? Like,
I understand that.
I could choose if you want. I could choose if you want.
Because, well, I mean, look, the most Chris choice ever is Jungle to Jungle. That's a movie I'm never going to pick. That you would only pick, I think. So that is tempting because I saw that movie as a kid. I remember that movie as a kid. The Terminal's an interesting one as a Tom Hanks one. When we've got movies like sort of Big and Sleepless in Seattle, I was curious about The Terminal as your Tom Hanks choice.
Yeah, but the reason for that is, one, Forrest Gump just seemed a bit big and heavy if you might not have a laptop.
Fair, yes.
That seemed like a fucking a triv nightmare. And I remember sort of enjoying The Terminal, and it is is heavily criticised, so I was intrigued by The Terminal.
I saw the Trivial. It's a movie about trivia. No, I saw The Terminal once, and it was in the cinema, and I also remember enjoying it. That is tempting. So it's Jungle to Jungle, The Terminal. What am I missing?
The Social Network.
The Social Network and Bruce Almighty. I'm gonna put Social Network to one side because the West Wing thing needs to stop, and I'm not gonna give you more in on that next season. That cannot carry on. because the amount of podcasts this year where we've been talking about the movie
would've-
and then you've been unplugged for about 5 minutes while you've Googled whether there's a cast member from one thing. We can't do that to the audience
fair.
next year. We just can't.
That's fair. I would say Social Network would be the end of it. Just to clarify, but yes, so that's a fair point.
I don't fancy doing. We've done a lot of Jim Carrey, so I'm narrowing it down to Jungle to Jungle and The Terminal, because I just think we've done a lot of Jim Carrey now. And I think the next one we do has got to be. I feel like we haven't we done like 3 or 4 Jim Carreys? We did the Cable Guy. We did Liar Liar.
We've done Cable. Yeah, they're the 2 that came to my mind. But I guess in my head we've not done a lot of the big guns.
We haven't done them. We haven't done Ace Ventura or
The
The Mask. Yeah, those are the 2 we've not done that would be big. You know what? Let's go with the ultimate Chris choice, because it's supposed to be a Chris choice. Let's do Jungle to Jungle.
Okay.
Let's do Jungle to Jungle. And I think my reasoning is sound there, which is just like I feel like that's a movie I'm never ever going to choose. So let's do it now. Let's do it on a Chris choice.
There you go. Boom. Jungle to Jungle.
But keep the Terminal in your back pocket, because I would like to do that, as I would with Social Network and the Jim Carrey one as well. But like
I think if you'd have forced me to pick, I'd have probably gone Bruce Almighty. I don't
Bruce
really
Almighty,
know
that
why,
was it.
but the other thing with the Bruce Almighty choices, though, because that was the first thing I thought of, and I was like, right, I'm not going to dick about. I'm not going to change my mind. I'm choosing Bruce Almighty. And then I thought back to, even though one of them was like a bit, I thought back to my choices this year, and I was like, Meet the Parents, Johnny English. I sort of feel like I've, like, do you know what I mean? Jungle to Jungle does feel like it's in a separate category to
Yes.
Bruce Almighty somehow, because I think it's a bit older.
Well, also it's a bit
Jungle to
it's a
Jungle.
bit more of a family film, I would say, because Bruce Almighty is sort of a family film, but it's like a family film on the edge where it's like making like mildly like adult jokes to sort of amuse kids. Whereas I feel like Jungle to Jungle is like a family comedy. It's supposed to be funny to everyone. It's sort of in that the Santa Claus bracket. So, but let's see if it holds up. I think probably not, but I'm genuinely interested to find out. I don't think I've seen it a huge amount. I had it on VHS. I remember that distinctly. I don't know how or why, but I did. So I definitely have seen that movie a couple times in my youth. But was it maybe that my cousin had it on VHS and I borrowed it occasionally? I feel like that might be it, actually. But yeah, either way, we'll find out. So yeah, so hopefully in November we'll be coming back to. We already know what the next 2 are, actually, because it'll be Jungle to Jungle, and then hopefully to line up with the release of Wicked for Good, which I am so excited about. We'll be doing the original Wizard of Oz, which I'm really looking forward to covering. So that's the first 2 of the next series, sort of teased for you guys there. Because why not?
Yeah.
But yeah, you can get us all the usual places.
Why not?
If you want to complain about Nadia's earlier interruption, it's mail@nothingbutstatic.co.uk. If you've got thoughts on the podcast, I've already received one from Chris. Just says that he's shocked and appalled. Nadia will need to personally reply to that. I'm going to hand her my phone later and make sure she does. You can support us in a few different ways. If you feel sorry for me and my laptop situation, you can help us on the Patreon. I said earlier to Chris, like I've joked that like what I should do is add a Dan needs a new laptop tier for like like $1,500. Just feel like someone support me. Someone help me out. But I would never do that. I'd be mortified. Even to put that up as a joke, if someone actually clicked on it and submitted that kind of money, I'd be like refunding it immediately. That wouldn't be fun. Which is, I imagine, Auntie Donna have a funny thing on their like website. If you go on their store, they've got like spend the afternoon with Broden, like $2 million or whatever, like Australian dollars or something. And I guess if someone ever actually paid for either of those, they would probably, I guess they would like refund it. I don't, because that's not legit. I don't think they mean that, but maybe they do. Anyway. You can support us on the Patreon. For as little as $1 a month, you can get episodes of this podcast a week earlier than their normal release, although we are aware we're now going into a bit of a dry spell because obviously there's going to be a gap. But yeah, you'll get the next episode a week ahead of the date we already gave, assuming we don't have any issues with our laptop situation. But yeah, in the meantime, you can get us on YouTube, and there's a Discord, youtube.com/nothingbutstatic.uk. Yeah, and just keep listening, recommend to friends, like and subscribe on all the various platforms. All that helps us out. We appreciate all of that. But yeah, keeping listening is the main one. We appreciate you for that. And hopefully, between now and when we come back on Rewind Reviews, you can check out our TV podcast, Nothing But Static, which is where we review we talk about like the TV news of each sort of 2-week period, and then we review a couple of shows that have recently aired. And sort of we do spoiler-free reviews where we say like if we think it's worth checking out, and then we sometimes, if we're really eager to talk about one spoilery element of a show, we'll put it at the end of the podcast and we'll say when it's like we're now doing spoilers, stop listening here. So we usually make it like so it's like the premise is that usually, are you laughing because that's not always what happens?
No, I'm laughing because I have a feeling we'll be doing that this week.
You don't think we'll be doing that this week?
No, I think we will be doing that this week.
Oh, that's funny. Okay, interesting.
Yeah, I suspect this week will be a week where we review a show and then talk for 10 minutes at the end.
Interesting. Well, yeah, but that's the fun thing, and I think I think the one thing that's a barrier for some people is they're always worried about like, oh, I haven't seen that show yet, I don't want to be spoiled on it. But the design of Nothing But Static's reviews is that we talk generally about the thing and whether it is worth you giving it a go, and it's sort of designed to help you make the choice of like which TV shows should I be prioritizing because there's a million of them, you know. And that's kind of always been what the idea is, like guide people to like the best stuff. And if you're wondering, out of the top of my head, the 2 best shows of last year, best comedy was The Studio, the best drama was The Pit, and we just did our big award show and decided those 2 things. So you know, there you go, 2 shows you can add to your recommendations list if you've got a big old list of TV shows you should be watching. But yeah, that's what that podcast generally looks like, unless we're doing one of our big recaps, which at the moment we're working our way through Breaking Bad and doing like special episodes every now and then where we break down Breaking Bad season by season, do like a big old 2-hour spoilery review. So yeah, that's where we're at. Thanks everyone though for listening. We do appreciate you very much. Another season of Rewind Reviews in the can. Come back next year, of course, or next season I should say. Hopefully not next year, because that would mean my laptop really did explode. Come back next season to hear us reviewing Jungle to Jungle and the original Wizard of Oz. But yeah, I'm going to hand over to Chris, who ends this thing.
My name's Chris Billingham.
My name's Dan Bean.
And this review has been rewound.